So you're Procter & Gamble in the mid-1800s. You've been making a decent living selling candles and soap made from animal fat for a few decades now. But come 1870 and things are getting tough. There's an economic downturn and you really don't want to end up on the streets like these schmucks. So you quickly swap out the animal fat in your soaps for a cheaper alternative, coconut and palm oil. You call your new creation Ivory Soap, and you market it as a purer alternative to all those nasty fat-based soaps your competitors are manufacturing. And people love it. Ivory Soap becomes the #1 soap used by hundreds of thousands of people all around the world. And since you're manufacturing it from cheap coconut and palm oil, you're making more money than ever before. But then you start thinking, we saved a ton of money switching from expensive animal fat to cheap coconut and palm oil. But what if there was an even cheaper oil we can use in our soap? Even cheaper oil equals more profits. So you start experimenting with cottonseed oil. What is cottonseed oil, you may ask? Why haven't you heard about it before? That's because cottonseed oil was only used as an industrial oil for lubricating machines and stuff, and it's highly toxic, causing things like infertility, pregnancy problems, liver damage, respiratory problems, and loss of appetite. But whatever, let's just work with it. All you have to do is find a way to remove the toxin gossypol from the oil, figure out how to turn this permanently liquid oil into a solid, and you will be golden. Compared to coconut oil, cottonseed oil was dirt cheap. So you hire a chemist named Edwin Kaiser to try to figure out a way to get around that little toxicity issue with cottonseed oil. And boom, Edwin Kaiser pulls through. He comes up with a chemical process called hydrogenation and successfully turns this highly toxic liquid oil into solid gold. You can see it now. Your cottonseed oil innovation would change the world of toiletries forever. But that's not all. As you sat back and took in the glorious bar of solid oil sitting in front of you, something hits you. See, unlike today where pretty much every single family cooks with vegetable oils in their kitchen, back then every housewife cooked with real animal fats. They cooked with animal fat in the form of lard. Lard that was very pricey. So you thought to yourself, wait a minute, doesn't this solid form of cottonseed oil kinda remind you of lard? Why don't we also market it as a cheaper alternative to lard? People will love it. And so Crisco was born.
Really crisp, not greasy.
Sure, the crisp goes in the French fries, because Crisco oil stays in the pan.
All the oil?
Almost. Watch. I'll measure the Crisco oil, then fry these potatoes, and...
Oh, Crisco oil stays in the pan.
And you poured everything you had into a massive marketing campaign. A marketing campaign to inculcate the masses into switching from natural animal fat to this industrial food product that started out as toxic. Crisco was new, it was fresh, it was so much cheaper than buying real nasty animal fats. I mean, come on! What sounds better to you, nasty, fatty animal lard or Crisco? There was simply no competition. So within just a few years, America became hooked on Crisco. But then you thought to yourself, why just stop at cottonseed oil? There are so many other seed oils out there. So throughout the years, this same hydrogenation process you used to turn cottonseed oil into a solid would also be used to create soybean oil, corn oil, canola oil, grapeseed oil, and many other industrial vegetable oils. There, that has a nice healthy ring to it.
You know, I always wonder about what PR room came up with the word vegetable oils. They're not made from vegetable oils. Vegetables, like broccoli or anything, they're made from seeds and beans.
So grapeseed oil, like any of these grain and seed oils, like corn oil, canola oil, which comes from the rapeseed plant, soybean oil, they're referred to sometimes within the food industry as RBD oils, refined, bleached, and deodorized oils. Ugh. Yeah, because they have like these again, these harsh, bitter flavors, right? Mm-hmm. Some of them, like the rapeseed, contain toxins like urusic acid.
They might want to change the name of that seed.
Yeah, right?
Doesn't it seem like a rude way?
Yeah.
You know, you want to murder fruit? No. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, why is it rapeseed?
Exactly.
And it worked. By 1980, almost every restaurant in the US switched over to using these cheaper seed oils in their fryers. And by 1993, Americans were consuming an average of 30 grams of seed oils per day compared to just 2 grams in 1909. And for you as Procter & Gamble, life couldn't be better. You were making millions. But then something happened that would turn your fairy tale into a nightmare. The studies started coming out. Studies showing that polysaturated fat found in vegetable oils turns into a varnish-like substance in the intestines. Like this kind of varnish. That vegetable oil is linked to high rates of cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and heart disease. And because these oils are not natural like their names want you to think, they get stored deep in our tissues and brain. So everyone's walking around with old toxic oil in their bodies, slowly inching them towards disease.
these fats also integrate themselves into your body. You are what you eat, right? And this is especially true for the kinds of fats that we consume.
Any polyunsaturated fat you give a pig is ending up in its fat. Any polyunsaturated fat that you or I eat is ending up in our fat tissue.
This is how much natural fats from things like beef, pork, dairy have been in our diet since 1960. This line is for vegetable oils. And this line is the obesity rates. Procter & Gamble fooled us all. Procter & Gamble and all these other companies fooled us into throwing away perfectly fine natural fats that came from real animals in exchange for these food products. Food products that started out as toxic industrial waste. And yet we willingly take the bite every single day. Popular Science wrote, quote, what was garbage in 1860 was fertilizer in 1870, cattle feed in 1880, and table food and many things else in 1890, end quotes. But today industrial seed oils are found everywhere. From fast food to restaurant kitchens to cookies, crackers, chips, candy, vegetable puffs, granola bars, and even nut milks. You and your family probably have some in your pantry right now. The seed oil industry oiled up America, they oiled up the world, and they're raking in $250 billion every year from it at your expense. Stay dangerous, subscribe for more, and this is the evil business of seed oils.
Crisco oil wouldn't let me down.
It's nice to know you can trust Crisco oil to fry chicken that doesn't taste greasy.
Verso for sponsoring this video.
Are you sure this is going to work? Why not? I made a Crisco pie. Yeah, me too, but a cake. I think you should have waited till your wife gets back.
Crisco first hit grocery shelves in 1911, and going in, your marketing teams knew they couldn't just let the ingredients speak for themselves. You had to convince the American public that eating a chemically solidified slab of cottonseed oil that previously could have rendered you infertile was not only normal, but better for you. You had to convince the public that it was even better than butter. So to achieve this monstrous feat, you were gonna have to launch one of the most epic advertising campaigns in American history. To do that, you hired J. Walter Thompson, a legendary full-service ad agency created by the American advertising pioneer by the same name. J. Walter Thompson was actually the very first full-service ad agency in America as well, and they got to work right away. They mailed samples of Crisco to restaurants and grocery stores. They handed out Crisco fried donuts in the streets. They gave away free Crisco cookbooks with every purchase, which all sound like standard marketing tactics today, but back then it was nothing short of revolutionary. You tell the writers at the agency to say Crisco is digestible. Although you had no scientific proof of this, it sure does sound good. And you also make sure that no one ever mentions the word cottonseed, because that would just remind people of soap, detergent, and machinery lubricant and not something that you would want to consume. The only thing on the ingredients list is 100% shortening, and if anyone ever asks you what shortening is, you say it's made from vegetables. In reality, cottonseed is a seed, but sure, I guess you could technically call it a vegetable if you really wanted to. It grows on cotton plants, doesn't it? And vegetables also grow on plants, so it's basically the same thing. And all of this mislabeling and misinformation was happening at the perfect time in history, because detailed food labeling laws from the FDA wouldn't be mandated until the late 60s. So for 50 sweet years, you could say Crisco was whatever you wanted it to be.
Oh, and look what Crisco will do for a pie. Makes my pie crust flaky as all get out. Cause I get out my Crisco and I do some special baking. I love trying out new recipes.
To make these light and golden Christmas cookies, butter-flavored Crisco is the recipe for success.
And within just a few short years, Crisco officially became the American baker's best friend. But why stop there? Why not use all your Crisco expertise to expand your product line even more?
Betsy, what are you saying? Don't use Crisco oil, Mom. There's something new. New Crisco oil. New Crisco oil.
After World War II, Procter & Gamble started experimenting with partial hydrogenation. So instead of turning cottonseed oil into a solid, they just kinda stopped halfway, leaving it as a liquid, while still removing all the toxic chemicals, color, and bad smells. This partially hydrogenated oil could be kept on the shelf for years, unlike disgusting animal fat. Restaurants loved it because they didn't have to keep changing the oil in their fryers. They could just keep reusing it. It just never went bad. What a miracle, right? Nabisco and Kraft loved it because their cookies could stay on warehouse shelves for months and months and months and still be crunchy. And during this new era of hydrogenated oils, Procter & Gamble ditched the rancid cottonseed oil that they collected from cotton farms for an even cheaper alternative: the leftover rancid soybean oil from animal feed production. So we went from using real animal fat to coconut and palm oil to cottonseed oil to now using a waste product from animal feed production. You know, the stuff that isn't even fit for animals to consume. Now that sounds yummy. So now Crisco products no longer contain cottonseed oil. No, that's far too luxurious for the masses. Now Crisco only contains soybean oil. and your empire only continued to grow.
Today's Crisco oil is remarkably clear, remarkably light, so you taste your fish, not our oil. And there's no cholesterol.
Deliciously, Crisco oil so light it sets the flavor free.
But then, just like Crisco's lard alternative, scientists started telling the world just how bad these hydrogenated oils were for your body. And so the war began.
Gets new Crisco oil. You're gonna love eating light.
Baby, you're the one who put the healthy in my healthy appetite.
With all this talk of vegetable oils being the new frontier, scientists all over America started getting suspicious. How could an oil this processed be good for you? And if it was, why didn't we think of it first? So they headed for the labs, and what they found was not flattering for you. One group of scientists found that although replacing animal fats with vegetable oils did lower cholesterol by 13%, it also made you twice as likely to die from cancer. Another group replaced animal fats with vegetable oils in the diets of men who had a history of heart disease and discovered that the ones who ate vegetable oil had a higher chance of dying. This wasn't exactly music to your ears, but you also weren't too worried about a few nerds in the lab. Because even though scientists were telling the world how bad vegetable oils were for your health, you had already formed a secret alliance with the one organization that mattered most, the American Heart Association, or AHA.
If you took all the cigarettes in the world and laid them end to end, you would never have time to smoke a single one. Now, isn't that a great idea?
See, in the 40s and 50s, the American Heart Association wasn't the huge nonprofit it is today. Back then, heart disease in the American Heart Association wasn't exactly a big deal to most Americans. But you knew something was coming. You knew the truth about your cheap oils would eventually be revealed. So you went on the offensive. In 1949, you chose the American Heart Association to receive a $1.5 million prize from a national radio competition that you happened to be the sponsor of. $1.5 million in 1949 would be the equivalent of $19 million today. A huge paycheck for a relatively unknown organization like the AHA. Generous, right? And it helped them go national overnight. The AHA now had all the power and resources it would ever need to influence the masses. What direction would it influence the masses in? Well, these scientists are humans at the end of the day. Humans that would like to maintain their prestigious titles and positions if possible. So if the AHA wanted daddy's money to keep rolling in, it would be in their best interest to maybe not badmouth vegetable oils. It would maybe be in their best interest to paint vegetable oils in the best light possible.
And then they, of course, as we know, they got a huge boost when the American Heart Association started recommending polyunsaturated vegetable oils to replace saturated fats. And this was a tremendous boost to the vegetable oil industry.
So thanks to your new propaganda arm, you, the seed oil industry, finally had free reign to market your oils as good for your heart and overall health. So you went around advertising all the upsides of the scientific studies we mentioned earlier. That seed oils lower cholesterol by 13%. That they're way healthier than butter, that they're so clear and white there's no way you could doubt their purity.
Gets new Crisco oil. You're gonna love eating light.
Baby,
But that wasn't all, because in 1961, a study would be released by the AHA that would forever change the way Americans thought about vegetable oil. The study was done by a famous physiologist named Ansel Keys, and it said that animal fats like butter actually raise cholesterol, and high cholesterol causes heart attacks. His solution? Replace your thick, disgusting animal fat with vegetable oils because of their proven ability to lower cholesterol by 13%. And the world ate it up. And with that, the seed oil industry had achieved something staggering. What was garbage in 1860 was fertilizer in 1870, cattle feed in 1880, table food and many things else in 1890, and now what's the hottest new health food in 1961. And oh, have we paid the price.
Here's Crisco cooking up fries, and because most of it comes back, there's no oily taste.
here it isn't, no oily taste, it's true, so you cook.
The process of hydrogenation made your vegetable oils edible, but there was a caveat. See, during the hydrogenation process, a new type of fat is created, trans fats. You could call this fat man-made frankenfat. In general, trans fat is considered the worst fat anyone could eat because it's not from nature. It's an artificial fat that's produced through the hydrogenation process.
These polyunsaturated fats, as I mentioned, the oils that are rich in them have trans fats, which we know are not friendly to your cardiovascular system. They're not friendly to your brain. Higher consumption of trans fats is associated with higher risk for developing Alzheimer's disease and worse memory function, even in the young and healthy.
The potential is that every single day, all of us in the Western world, if we're eating excess vegetable oils, excess polyunsaturated fats, specifically linoleic acid, we are driving a signal to our adipocytes that winter is coming. Get fat. Stay fat.
Whoa.
And by the 1980s, all those pesky scientists that keep trying to debunk your healthy oil claims were getting really concerned about these artificial trans fats. In 1990, 2 Dutch scientists released a study revealing that artificial trans fats actually raise your cholesterol, even more than animal fats do, causing a huge risk for coronary heart disease. This was not what you and your other vegetable oil giants wanted to hear, so you tried to fight science with science. In 1994, a group of edible oil manufacturers funded Joseph Judd, a scientist from the US Department of Agriculture, to try to prove that trans fats didn't cause heart disease, but it didn't work. Joseph ended up with the same results as the Dutch scientists. And this finally caused the FDA to finally pressure the seed oil industry to at least label how much trans fats are in your products. As simple as the request seemed, you really didn't want to do it. Why? Because your Crisco shortening contains 50% trans fat. And according to the studies, if just 2% of your daily fat intake comes from trans fat, your risk of heart disease goes up by 23%. People were basically spreading heart attack on their morning toast. The FDA's decision to make trans fat information public could end you. So what did you do? You reformulated. You went to none other than Monsanto, the company behind Agent Orange, GMOs, seed licensing, which practically makes them the company that owns the world's food supply. Watch our private documentary on Monsanto by clicking that join button below. And you asked Monsanto to create a genetically modified soybean that doesn't produce artificial trans fats in the hydrogenation process. What, did anyone really think you were gonna learn from your mistakes and go back to a healthier, more expensive oil source? Don't be silly. Thanks to Monsanto's GMO genius, you got what you wanted. Now all your packages sported a big red stamp saying 0 trans fat, so everyone knew you were the good guy now. The guy looking out for everyone's health. But there's just one last secret. One last loophole you used to rebrand into a health-conscious alternative fat brand. See, when the FDA announced in 2003 that you guys had to put trans fat content on your labels, you were actually still allowed to say 0 trans fat as long as the product didn't have more than 0.5 grams per serving. According to the FDA's rules, the key word here is per serving. So if 1 tablespoon of Crisco has 12 grams of fats, and 0.5 grams of that is artificial trans fat, then 8.3% of the fat content is trans fat. And that study said if 2% of the fat you eat is trans fat, it could cause a 23% increase in heart disease. I know, it's enough to make an oil tycoon's head spin. But this still wasn't the end. You needed to ride the 0 grams of trans fat wave for as long as possible before your time finally ran out.
Today we're going to talk about eliminating toxic seed oils.
And margarine is terrible for you.
Vegetable oil.
Yeah, and now people know what's really good for you is grass-fed butter. The grass-fed butter is actually not bad for you at all.
The more I dig into it, the more I believe this is the center of human chronic health issues.
The year is 2015, and the FDA has officially banned artificial trans fats from all foods, giving everyone until 2018 to get them completely out of their products. Except the 0.5 grams per serving because we all need a little wiggle room. This is why you'll still see Crisco sitting on grocery store shelves with 0.5 grams of fat missing from their nutrition label. And even though shortening is way less popular than it was in the 60s and 70s, it's still available to buy. People are still using it in online cooking videos.
Certainly, high fructose corn syrup is not helping anything, but I think it's important for people to understand that that might not be the only villain, and that a lot of people might get rid of the sugar but then continue eating processed food or hummus with canola oil or, chips from the store that are cooked in soybean oil and not understand it. And this could be driving a lot of the disease that we're seeing in a really subtle way.
Some restaurants have molded their entire business structure around these cheap, long-lasting oils. Even In-N-Out, the legendary burger chain in the West Coast of America, proudly proclaims that their French fries are only fried in 100% sunflower oil. And because the label says trans fat free, we think it's okay to eat. At least it's better than before, right? Well, these trans fat free oils actually might be worse than their high trans fat counterparts. Studies are coming out on the dangerous chemicals created by trans fat free oil that has been heated over and over again in restaurant fryers.
Aldehydes, one of the aldehydes is a formal marker for your cancer, for cancer risk. And aldehydes are created, are just created in huge amounts when they fry food in polyunsaturated oils.
Restaurant owners are saying that this oil is creating a strange gooey substance that is impossible to clean off their walls. Turns out that gooey substance is actually a polymer.
He said the polymers, these degraded molecules were so unstable that when they would put the uniforms in the backs of trucks to go take them to the cleaners, the uniforms would spontaneously combust. And then when they took them to clean them and they put them in the dryers, there were still so many of these toxic chemicals in them that they would explode in the dryers. So, I mean, just imagine, we're just all putting this in our bodies.
Once more studies on the effects of these new oils hit mainstream media, Crisco, Mazola, and all the other vegetable oil brands will probably have to adjust again. Whatever they do, we probably won't know about it until 3 decades from now. And by then, the damage will already have been done. To this day, US dietary guidelines still say that we should cook with canola, corn, and soybean oil. That's right, even after all of this, the edible oil industry still has the faithful backing of the US government. That is how powerful they are. And you want to know what else the government shoves down our throats? Fluoride. You know fluoride, right? It's in your toothpaste, tap water, table salt, bottled water. The government doesn't let you escape it even if you wanted to. Why? Because it's good for you, they say. It's good for your teeth, it prevents cavities. When in reality, fluoride started out as a harmful poison that was part of the aluminum manufacturing process. In reality, high doses of fluoride have been found to lower IQ in children, among many other very bad things. And yet for some reason, fluoride was able to go from this manufacturing poison to something that's good for you that we need to shove into your water supply. For some reason, the United States, Canada, Australia, Ireland, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom generously provide you with fluoride in your tap water free of charge. Why? Click the card on the screen to watch our new documentary on fluoride right now on our new channel called Evil Food Supply.